And today we debut a new segment that we're going to try to do every week. We may not get someone every single week, but we're going to try. And that is a Foodie Friday segment. As we get you ready, nothing goes better with college football and the NFL than some good food, some good drinks, that kind of thing, to sit down in front of your TV and watch a game. And so we kind of want to bring some of that to you. And that means part of it is we go around, because of my barbecue background, we do get to meet some great pitmasters. And Rogers, it just so happened, I'm standing in line for Cattleack last Saturday, getting ready to go call the Northwestern State North Texas game, and the guy who's out there running beer to everyone in line comes, and my sister kind of browbeats him because he didn't have any beer left, so she kind of browbeated him into bringing her a beer. And then he stops and starts chatting with us, and lo and behold, it's the owner and pitmaster, Todd David, from Cattleack Barbeque in Dallas, and he joins us now on the Patrick Netherton Show. Great to have you with us, Todd. How the heck are you, man?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm fantastic. You know, to me, that's one of the coolest aspects of barbecue, especially Texas barbecue, is you often have a line. And so most of the places that have a line will go and either give you free beer, in y'all's case, beer or water. You had those kind of stations set up. I've got to imagine for you, you're the guy out there running the beer. You could be in the back not talking to anybody. But is that kind of fun for you to be able to go out and meet the people that are waiting in line to sample your stuff?
I absolutely. I mean, the whole reason we do what we do is for the people. And so the thrill that we get out of it is the thrill that they get out of it. And that's kind of what barbecue is, in my opinion. If you go to a backyard barbecue of any type, it's that whole camaraderie, social atmosphere. The food is kind of the bonus. And so that's what it's all about, is kind of getting away. We're in a office area, so some of the people are coming from work, some are coming from home, some are coming from Louisiana, and all kinds of stuff. So making that their day, and that's the bonus. And so that's what it's all about. It's for us, it's not about the money part, although we have to stay in the black, but it's more about just that thrill, having them have that incredible experience. And the experience is the food, the people, the atmosphere. We don't have a liquor license, so yes, when it's hot out, it's like, gosh, do we give away water or do we give away beer? And we give it away. They spend enough money inside, so we can do something nice for them. So,
yeah.
And we keep water the same way, and now we've got coolers out there too. So it's just part of that day.
Yeah.
So, the whole experience.
And part of the great thing for me is, look, I don't mind standing in line. I think that's part of the whole experience, right? You're standing on. Now, the bad part about standing in line, and Rogers, I had this happen to me, is when Todd comes back over and goes, hey, we're getting close to running out of burnt ends, we're getting close to running out of pork ribs, and the guy literally walks up to write down the stuff you're out of, and while you're standing in front of him, he writes burnt ends and pork ribs right there. That's like a knife to your heart, kind of. But at the same time, you still, at least we got brisket, at least we got a beef rib, we got all the good stuff still there. And that's kind of an interesting thing, Todd, because you're only open a couple of days a week, first Saturday of the month, that sort of thing. How do you go about trying to figure out how much to cook when you can't necessarily diagnose or really forecast what kind of a crowd you're going to have?
Well, have you ever been to Vegas?
Sure.
It's kind of like that. I mean, it's a crapshoot.
Yeah.
And you happen to come here on a holiday weekend.
Yeah.
And so when there's a holiday weekend, we kind of know our normal crowd. When you add the holiday to it, I don't know who's going to come in and say, I need 6 briskets to take to the lake.
Yeah.
And this past weekend for Labor Day, they were literally ordering, instead of ordering beef ribs, a beef rib is huge. It's close to 2 pounds. It's $30 or $40. So normally when someone gets a beef rib, that's a big deal. people were in for the holidays. They're ordering slabs of beef ribs, and someone did come in and got 5 slabs of beef ribs.
Wow.
Well, that is, I don't know, 25% of the amount of beef ribs we have for one day. So when that kind of stuff goes on, it wouldn't matter if I made 100 slabs of beef ribs.
Right.
There's always more coming on those kind of days. So on a normal situation, like, of course, we just finished today the end of a week after a holiday, which is almost the opposite.
Yeah.
Everybody's out of money, and they've already partied a little bit this week. The people that would normally take Friday off can't take Friday off because they already took Monday off for the holiday, so they're back at work. So it's a different style of gearing up for or down for the amount of business that we expect on a given day.
Yeah.
But normally, we try to make sure the Holy Trinity in Texas is brisket, ribs, and sausage.
Mm-hmm.
So we try to make dang sure that those 3 things make it all the way to the end for us. And they usually do, or it's pretty close.
Yeah.
The specials, it's a little tougher of a challenge because you don't know who's going to buy what. And today we had pastrami, and we made it the whole day. And yesterday the same way. We made it the whole day with pastrami. Last week, I think the pastrami was out at 11 o'clock in the morning.
Wow.
So it's very difficult to do. You can't just go cook another one. It's not like a steak restaurant
Sure.
where you grab another steak and throw it on the grill and it's ready in three minutes. So that's a hard challenge.
Yeah.
And I don't want people to wait in line, but it is a necessary evil. And it's real hard to have a reputable product and not have a line because there's so many people. I'm in a big city. I mean, Dallas is huge,
Yeah.
and word gets out and there's a lot of great barbecue places here. I mean, a lot. But still, every one of them is busy because there's only so many good places to really eat lunch, and barbecue is right now, it's probably a lot of people's number one choice.
Yeah.
Which is, like I said, a great position to be in. So,
Especially
to
in
answer your
Texas.
question, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I
Texas loves it.
No, and look, people nearby to Texas love it. As a matter of fact, when Greg Abbott shut the border down to Louisiana, I was on the air calling myself El Pork Chapo, trying to figure out how I was going to smuggle myself and or barbecue across the border because I couldn't go to Texas to get a fix. So I get it. Yeah, I was figuring out tunnel systems to Jefferson to try to go pick up some barbecue. I was upset, I can tell you that. Hey,
well, and they also shut off the trucks from coming in here a little bit to bring the raw product for us to cook.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's a challenge. That's a whole other subject we'll get to in just a second. But
Sure.
I do want to kind of back up a little bit because you're a guy you were not a barbecue guy. You didn't start in the business. You started off doing disaster renovation, recovery, that kind of thing. Walk me through how you go from a long career in sort of disaster recovery, and turn that into, okay, well, now I'm going to have a barbecue restaurant.
Well, you're right. I never planned to be in the barbecue world, and I never planned to be in the restaurant world either. And so, but I did have the luxury of growing up in St. Louis, and St. Louis is a big barbecue area. And although I don't think, when I was a kid in the 60s and going to Cardinal baseball games and Cardinal football games, there was no barbecue to go be given out there. It was all hot dogs. But, anyway, but we did, that was the number one thing to do in the backyard when I grew up, was eat barbecue. So barbecue's kind of always been in my blood a little bit, not at this kind of level, but just as that's a great way to have a backyard fun and entertainment and things of that sort. So when I have a degree in accounting, graduated college, came to Dallas to play CPA, and then I went into sales. I didn't really like that. And then I went back to having my own business, excuse me, which was a cleaning business, and cleaning then developed at the next level into disaster cleanup, and which is a little more sophisticated than just washing windows and cleaning carpets and stuff like that. So that was the clean whole side of it. The cooking barbecue, I'm not a cook and I'm not a chef, but all my life I've known how to cook a slab of ribs and grill things. I didn't know what a brisket was until Dallas.
Yeah.
And, but I knew pork steaks. I knew ribs. Those were probably the biggest things, sausage, stuff like that. And so when I was in the disaster cleanup business, it's funny because in the disaster cleanup business, we dealt with water, fire, smoke. Those are the main things.
Yep.
In the barbecue business, we deal with water, fire, smoke in a whole different way.
Yeah.
It's kind of the opposite.
A
we
constructive
used to try to
use.
remove it. Yes. Well, we used to try to remove it out of people's businesses so it wasn't doing harm and get them back to normal. Now we're trying to pump it in. We're trying to make sure that the meat and the wood stay moist. We're trying to make sure there's smoke. We're using fire to do that. And so that part of it's kind of erratic. It did help to know the restoration business and how those different things work together, and pressure and air movement and things like that, so that when I did deal with it with barbecue, it made some more sense.
Yeah.
So anyway, so in the disaster business, we just did commercial work, and some of ours were large. The biggest disaster I ever participated in was when Fort Worth got hit by a tornado, I think in year 2000. We didn't storm chase. Everything we did was here in the Metroplex. So I didn't go to Louisiana and places like that. So, but I had so many of the large buildings around here that we took real good care of them, and we were always here when they would call. And so on a large disaster, it requires a lot of additional manpower. And a lot of times that manpower is temporary help. And temps, for different reasons, don't have a job. And at the same time, even though they've been sent to us, we call a temporary service and say we need 50 people or 100 people. They send people over. Those people figure they're getting paid either way, and they would disappear at lunchtime because they would go to lunch and just not show up back. And they figure you're not going to miss them. Well, a few years of that happening, like when that tornado hit Fort Worth, it was, okay, we need to feed them on the job site so they can't leave. And we ended up buying our first large smoker so that I could do two things. One is I could feed those people, and two is I could run that smoker through the business. And the company owned it.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how the barbecue got started on a little bit larger scale. And then just slowly people started learning about that. Two major things happened. We would do some big events as people found out about it. Emmett Smith, I had met on a golf course, and as we drove around, all Emmett wanted to talk about was barbecue.
Yeah.
And we ended up making barbecue for 7 of his golf tournaments he used to have in Dallas. And in fact, I put one of the big smokers at his house for a few weeks and so on. So that's how we got the big smokers. It was just things would come up, and it was weddings and backyard parties and company parties and that type of stuff. And then I reached a point where I was kind of tired of the restoration business and some of the challenges that went with it. And while we did well in it, and we did make money, I'm not going to tell you we didn't, but that stuff's only good if you can enjoy it. And the disaster business is an 80-hour a week. For me, it was 80 hours a week on the average week of taking care of business. And that business, we were on call for all the time. We didn't know when we were working next. In the barbecue world, sometimes I think I work more now than I did then, but I know when I'm going to work.
Yeah.
I know the days we're open. I know what it's going to take to get ready, and I have fun doing it. And it's still something I enjoy. How when I came to Dallas, it was how I met people. I moved here I went to college at what was Southwest Missouri State in Springfield back then. And when I came here, I moved in new apartments over in the village, and I didn't know anybody. And I'd cook barbecue on my balcony and meet girls and stuff like that. And it was great. I was on the pool, and got to. That's part of what barbecue is. It's that social whole interaction, and everybody's having a good time, and you get good food with it. So it kind of all mingled together. When we sold the disaster business, I was, let's 50 something back then. And there was no way, I think retirement's one of those overrated things. There was no way I was going to sit around the house.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time I was on the golf course, 3-4 days a week. And I was on the range the other days. And I still hit the ball in the water all the time.
Yeah.
And I still sucked at that game. And I enjoyed it, but I just couldn't master that. And so, Misty's my wife. Misty and I sat around talking about what we're going to do. And I said, you know what? People are always looking for this barbecue. Why don't we just cater it? And a restaurant wasn't even considered.
Yeah.
And I said, well, just find a little place and put it in a little kitchen. And if something comes up, we'll cater it. And if nothing does, we'll do what we want to do. If we want to travel, we'll travel. And we did. We traveled for the first year or two that I sold the business, but we had a place for the barbecue business. And we would cook for who we wanted, when we wanted, and we didn't do much of it. And although they asked a lot, but I had been so locked in that business for over 35 years in the disaster cleanup business that it was time to go some different places. My son graduated from college. We took him to Italy, and we did some things. And then we came back and said, okay, it's time to go back to work. And we started doing more barbecue. And then what happened was the people that would come to an event, let's just say a wedding, they'd be like, oh, where's your restaurant? Well, we don't have a restaurant. Oh, well, we're thinking about having you at this event or that event. How do we come check it out and this and that? And they could only really check it out at the thing that they met us at.
Right.
We didn't really have a place. So I decided that we could take the front of this industrial building we were in. We were in an industrial space because it was cheap and all we needed was a kitchen. We never thought the public would come here. It was just, where can we cook? It's not my house. That would be legal, and we could store the smoker. At that time, we just had one smoker. We could store. Actually, we had two smokers in the restoration business. We could store the smokers and groceries, and we could get a food company to deliver all that. And we didn't realize that we were building a food business, and that's how everything came into existence here. And then we decided to open one day a week for people to come here to eat. It could only be takeout, which was fine with me because I didn't know anything about how to do the rest of it anyway.
Right.
So it'd be all right. We'll get a little counter. You come in, you order a sandwich. They take it home or they go back to work. We were in Addison. We still are in Farmers Branch, Texas, which is next to Addison. And Addison is a big high-rise area. And so there were plenty of people to go around. All our customers before were from the high-rise businesses because that's who we did disasters for. So all the big buildings in town, the tenants, the law firms, the accounting firms, all those kind of people all knew about us from 35 years of both cleaning and disaster work. And so it was easy. And we had their contact information and all that. We own the businesses. In the early days, it was just carpet cleaning. Then we got into that disaster cleanup. I, at one point, split it into two companies, and we sold it off that way. But we had so many contacts. So those contacts through emails and things like that all ended up finding out that, hey, these guys have a barbecue business.
Yeah.
Plus, in probably the last 10 years of the disaster business, we came up with this real clever, we had a large warehouse with all this drying equipment. And we came up with and it was called Restorex. And we came up with this program called Relax at Restorex. And once a month, we invited all our customers to come over and have lunch. And we would cook them barbecue. And it was really cool for us because here was what started as 30, 40, 50 customers. It turned into 200 customers would show up on this third Wednesday of each month. And there were no other vendors there. There were no salespeople. There was nothing. There was a few hundred of our customers and my team. And so it was the best marketing thing we ever did.
Sure.
And we quit going to visit our customers. All our customers would all come visit us. So anyway, so when we started actually having a place where they could go buy barbecue, it was easy for them to make that transition and say, yeah, we want to go check it out. So we had customers very quickly.
Yeah.
And you know Daniel Vaughn, so
Sure.
That's where Daniel Vaughn first saw us. Was he came into that little shack and came up to the counter and got food and went out to his car and ate it on his tailgate or his hood, or I don't know what. And that was probably the first time he ever wrote anything about us, which was mixed reviews. And but he's always treated us really well and so on. But you know, and so then you have things like that, and you start slowly getting in the public's eye a little bit of, oh, there's barbecue here. And then we remodeled that after about the first years because we said, well, hell, we can't just do takeout. This isn't going to work. People got to be able to sit down. And we remodeled that little space we had. Mm-hmm. We just had part of the building you were in. We remodeled that space so you could fit in there 4 little picnic tables. Again, it's backyard barbecue.
Yeah.
And so now 4 tables could fit inside, and I think we put 2 tables outside. So you had 6 tables worth of where people could sit. And they would still wait in line, but they would get to, and we could cook more. It was more than just brisket and sausage and ribs, and we started slowly expanding the menu a little bit. We love the innovation part of this barbecue stuff. And then I guess probably somewhere between 3 and 5 years later, our landlord was our neighbor in the same building we are. And he had a majority of the building, and they bought another building behind us and moved their whole company over there. So then his whole space was empty, and for 9 months he kept saying, why don't you take some more space? And finally we decided, you know what, we'll take part of it. And it was kind of split where you could get away with that. And we called in the city, and the fire marshal and the health lady and so on. And we sat down with everyone and said, hey, we're thinking about taking more space in this building, but before we do, because it wasn't really zoned for what we were doing. And so before we do, we want everybody's approval of how to go about it. And they worked with us and helped us. The City of Farmers Branch is just excellent. And they worked with us and came up with a solution of how could we add a seating area and not have to do huge amounts of things like sprinkler heads and stuff like that.
Right.
And so what we ended up with was about 5, I guess it's been about 5 years now. About 5 years ago, we took over the space next to us and we remodeled it to what we call the corral and the Cattleack Corral. And now we've got 12 huge picnic tables in there, and we'll seat over 100 people in there for lunch. And then we have some nice seating outside underneath the cover. And so now it's the restaurant I never thought I would ever have or had any kind of plan to have, but it works really well. We still try to keep it kind of that backyard environment.
Yeah.
There's pictures of people that have inspired me in this barbecue world all over the walls. There's just funny sayings and billboard type stuff, and there's a bunch of banners for the Texas teams up on the ceiling, and it's just kind of that as close as we can get to that backyard atmosphere a little bit.
Yeah,
so,
makes sense. Talking to Todd David from Cattleack Barbeque. I'm curious, you're a Thursday, Friday, and the first Saturday of the month is when you're open. Have you thought about potentially expanding or maybe opening more days, or are you comfortable with that Thursday, Friday, and the first Saturday?
So, I told you how we weren't even going to open to the public. We
Sure.
were just going to cater. And so we opened on Friday only for takeout. And we added Thursday. People are always like, why are you only open 2 days? And the honest truth is because one day didn't work. I tried doing just Fridays, and it wasn't enough revenue to pay the bills. And so that's how we got to 2 days. And then we added the first Saturday of each month because, again, we're kind of here it's not just to provide this service of the barbecue. I mean, I really enjoy doing it, and I employ a staff, and it helps them stay employed and have a source of income. But the people are so important part. Well, people couldn't get here on Saturday.
Sure.
They work. They live too far. I think you came here on a Saturday.
I did.
And so that's why we opened the first Saturday. My wife and I weren't willing to give up our weekends, and we kind of try to balance things because my life was so out of balance in the disaster work, which is when I met her, quite frankly, was when I was in the cleaning and disaster business. Anyway, so long answer to your question, but when we've looked at when would we go additionally if we added, has always been to go more Saturdays. And we don't right now. It's still just one Saturday. But if we ever decided to grow, that would be the first step that we would take.
Yeah.
Would be to add more Saturdays. And because that's such a barbecue day anyway.
Yeah.
And it just works. And we just haven't bitten that off yet.
No, it's tough. It's absolutely like you said. It's a labor of love, but it is a labor in that. Last couple things for you, Todd. We were talking about meat prices, and right now there is a really last year during the pandemic, you had meat prices that were going up because the distributors were getting hit with COVID, and the plants were having to shut down, and so you had much less, much fewer opportunities for the meat to get processed. Now you don't really have the COVID issues as much as you just have, to me, kind of an artificial inflation of meat prices going on right now, just because there's so few companies that actually do it, and it's kind of monopolized. How is that affecting you on your end?
Well, first of all, that's probably one point I disagree with you a little bit, just because what I know about it. So they do still have a COVID problem. The problem that has occurred is as you look around here or anywhere, there's still a labor problem today. Mm-hmm. So a couple of things happened at the processing plants. The processing plants was the biggest issue, and they still have problems. So the problems they have is, one, they cut people loose like everybody else did because things just got shut down because people were sick. And then some of those people never went back to work. And for numerous different reasons, whether it was the government giving them money or they were afraid of getting sick and they weren't sick or whatever. They had to change their lives. They had to change things to where people weren't working on top of each other. And so what used to produce, let's say, 500 head of cattle could now only produce 300 or 400 head of cattle because you had to spread the people apart until they could build more buildings and warehouses and things of that sort. Even a Coca-Cola, when I talk to the people that we buy our Coke from, which is not always directly from Coke, and they explain what's going on there, and there's more bottling plants being built and things of that sort, because we can't get Coke. And we've gone 30 days. We're not, right now we can get Coke, but we went 30 days straight. We couldn't even get Coca-Cola. And the reason we couldn't get Coke is because Coke couldn't get bottles.
Right.
And so, so then they fixed those problems, which a lot of them have. They've built places and so on. But now you still have a work problem.
Yeah.
They still can't hire people. There's still people who don't want to go back to work. There's still people that are supposedly making money staying at home instead of going back to work. And so there's a temporary labor shortage, which is creating a little bit of a food shortage. And so while the food processors want to kick out more meat, and there's plenty of animals, but even on the animal side. So most of all of our beef is Wagyu beef. And I'm very lucky because that all comes from a company called the Heart Brand, which is a Texas-based company. So all our beef is Texas-based Wagyu, even though the animals started in Japan.
Right.
And when it got tough, maybe a year ago or whatever it was, when it got tough, because everything slowed down, they also slowed down the whole breeding thing. Okay? So then there's less cattle to go around. And, of course, supply and demand, that runs the price up. Then they're trying right now, as well as other ranchers and other types of meat, whether it's pork or other beef companies, everybody's trying to gear back up. And you just don't, get an animal pregnant and drop out a cow in a short amount of time.
Yeah, it's not an instantaneous process to get back to where you were. Yeah.
So everybody's still trying to gear their businesses back up. So, but you're right. The prices have gone up. Some of it I can't explain. Some of it I just can't explain. The shortages are absolutely crazy. Everything from containers to Coca-Cola to meat to napkins to everything. And some of those companies, I feel, I don't know this as a fact, but I feel sometimes it's like, okay, like you said earlier, some people are just taking advantage of it.
Sure.
And it's like, okay, we can make more money. Let's do it while we can.
Let's take advantage of the opportunity. Yeah.
We used to buy, and plastic's gone up because gas has gone up and so on, but gas was going way down there for a while too. Plastic containers went from maybe up 200%. Plastic gloves, like nitrile gloves, vinyl gloves, some of those went from $30, $40 a case to $200 a case. That is not all because their costs have gone up.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I don't.
Yeah. No, I agree with
think
you.
So.
No, I agree with you. Absolutely.
I don't think so.
No.
So, yeah, so we do have to eat some of that. We've raised our meat prices for the first time in at least 5 years.
And that's pretty remarkable because everywhere, especially every barbecue restaurant I know, is having to raise prices in order just to not lose money, basically. So to not have raised your prices for that long is pretty remarkable.
Well, I have really, really good partnerships with our purveyors that bring everything. And both the meat side, Benny Keith, who brings all our supplies, and I talk to these folks every single day. And they're trying to help us every which way we can because our beef comes from one company and our pork another, and we're not shopping that stuff. Those companies back us the best they can, and they also know the kind of business we run. We're not a huge customer, so we're not using big stakes. I mean, when I say stakes in their business.
Right.
We're not using a big chunk of that we're going to make their day or break or ruin their day. And so they try to work with us. It's nice to stay small in that situation as long as you have a really good relationship.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if you didn't, then they don't need you. But we do some different marketing stuff for them. We've been in some of their ads and things for their clients. And, Akaushi beef, which is the Heart brand Wagyu beef we use, we talk about Akaushi all the time. And it's great for the Akaushi community and things of that sort. So we all try to really work. You'll see how the barbecue community works together.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of the same way with our food community too.
Yeah, you've got to be. You really do. You have to find a way to make it work. However, you can find a way to make it work. All right, brother, we are up against it. But Todd, so great to have you on, man. Again, Thursdays and Fridays, and the first Saturday of every month. 10:30 is when they open. Get there early. There is a line. I promise you it's worth it, though. Whatever you want to charge, Todd, I promise you it's worth it. Your food's incredible.
Now,
and love your
we
story,
try to keep those
man.
prices down as low as we can.
Yeah, but look, you could charge what you want, and it's still worth it. The line's worth it. It's all worth it. Get out to Cattleack Barbeque in Dallas. Todd, thank you so much for your time, man.
Hey, thanks for having me. I love it, and I appreciate you coming in.
You got it. Todd David, pitmaster and owner of Cattleack Barbeque in Dallas.